to a Tuesday after the first Monday night football game. And got to tell you, we got a ton of crazy things that happened this past weekend. We talked about some of them yesterday, and we'll get to your questions here in a sec. There's plenty going on out there, and we're gonna have to sit back and take a breath, right? I mean, it's only the first week of the season. It's not one of those things where you go, oh, let's don't jump to conclusions and put teams in the Super Bowl that don't belong there, or take teams that potentially could be in the Super Bowl and pull them out. So that's in that situation. And of course, we've got an amazing amount of college stuff, going on this week. So let's begin with the NFL power rankings for this week, and we'll go. I'm going to go through them real quick, and what you're going to do out there from a question standpoint. Tell me if you agree or not. The number one team this week in the NFL power rankings, the Philadelphia Eagles. Basically the Super Bowl champions. They took care of business. They downed a rival in the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday night, and looked pretty good in doing it. So. We'll see. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley didn't look like any problems they had. Number two, Buffalo Bills. Now, Buffalo came back. Josh Allen, had to hear the chants for Lamar Jackson coming from his own stadium where they were chanting MVP, coming from the fans from Baltimore. But at the end of the day, Jackson did well, but the Ravens lost that game on a final second kick, and Buffalo is 1-0. And I don't know that you couldn't say, and Baltimore, by the way, is their number 3 ranked team. I'm not so sure that I wouldn't rank both of these teams. Buffalo number 1. I'd have Buffalo number 1. I have Baltimore number 2. I'd have the Eagles at number 3. Green Bay Packers at number 4. Micah Parsons shows up and actually plays, which is amazing given the fact that he was traded midweek. So he literally got 2 days worth of practice in and made some amazing tackles during that time. And Jordan Love looked pretty damn good as the quarterback of that team. Kansas City at number 5. Interesting. They lost to the Chargers, and it was unexpected. I mean, a lot of people thought that Kansas City. By the way, you may recall that I said don't sleep on the Chargers, which I think came out in that particular game. So they're number 5. I'm not sold that Kansas City will be there at the end. There's no question about that. Whether they'll be in the Super Bowl, who knows? But they're definitely going to be, did they take a step back? We don't know that. But I don't think you should rank them at number 5. I think that's a little too high. The Buccaneers at number 6, Baker Mayfield, started cold. Now, as we all knew, he didn't play in any of the preseason games. So, he shook off the rust, and he did pretty darn good. Emeka Ikabu, who we talked about. Now, he was a guy who we all liked coming out of the draft, and as a rookie, he really stepped in, caught the game-winning touchdown. Ibuku is going to be, he's going to be a star in the league. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that we need to worry about that. That's not going to happen. He's going to be good. Nothing to wear, nothing to see there. They're hoping, and this is the key, their left tackle is Tristan Wirth, and of course he's injured. He might be back hopefully as soon as week 4, and so we'll see how that works out for them. So the Buccaneers, who got by the Falcons on the road, avoided a potential tying field goal and ended up winning, 23-20. Washington Commanders, Jalen Daniels, he missed some throws, no doubt about it. Got caught for an intentional grounding. But at the end of the day, he really looked good, and so did the Washington Commanders. Daniels threw for 233 yards, ran for 68 yards, part of a 220-yard rushing attack for a Washington team. Deebo Samuels and Jacoby Cross-Merritt were the big guys when it came to making their Commanders debut. And frankly, it was a pretty impressive win. Now, big game this week for them is at Green Bay. Jordan Love and Jalen Daniels, and I'm sure the folks at Amazon Prime Video are real happy about that one. Detroit Lions, they didn't really look good at all, and they're getting ranked 8th. This is, guys, I'm a little confused. I'm talking, these are the rankings of the NFL.com group, and the Lions look, I mean, they got tamed by Green Bay. Now, is it Green Bay's that good, or is it that Ben Johnson had a bad week with his new coordinators? I think that Detroit's going to be there. I don't think that they necessarily deserve to be ranked at number 8 at this point in time. Denver Broncos. Bo Nix is a freak. We knew he was good. We told you he was good. He played well last year. He played well in the first game this year. So anybody who's looking for, any backsliding, Jalen Daniels at Washington, nope. And Bo Nix at Denver, not there. The Rams in the number 10 spot. They held the Texans to 265 yards, which is really, really a good thing. That's amazing, given the phenomenal offense that they have. Everyone was concerned about Matt Stafford's back issues. Well, he hit Puka Nacua a couple of times with some key throws in the game, and basically, they had their way with Houston, which I don't think many people thought was going to happen. Last night, the J.J. McCarthy era, should say, not issue, era began, and J.J. was fantastic. He played really, really well, and I guess that's what people were waiting for. So, got Matt coming here. Hang on, Matt's coming. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, good.
We're just talking about last night and J.J. McCarthy, and I'll be the first one to say I wasn't expecting what I saw from J.J. McCarthy. Now, it's only one game, but he certainly didn't do a bad job of affording himself last night against Chicago.
Yeah, no, he did a pretty good job. I think it is important to add context to when JJ McCarthy started looking good. First 9 drives, they averaged about 3 yards a carry. Their offense put up 6 points. After that, they averaged roughly 10 yards a carry, somewhere in there. I think the stat was 9.8, maybe to be exact. But he needed that run game, and he is a rookie quarterback. That was his first start in the NFL. It's understandable to need that running game, but he wasn't successful until he had it. And not only was he not successful, he looked abysmal until he had it, to be honest with you. He was the beneficiary of pass interference call. Now, granted, it was pass interference. That led to 3 points and a solid return and good field position that led to the other 3 points before half. But he did look they were able to come back and take control of a game that they, quite frankly, felt completely out of for the first 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, I was a little interested in, I guess, confused, it would be a better way of putting it, about what the game plan that Chicago came up with regard to, Caleb Williams. I mean, it really wasn't I thought that he could do more, and I don't think they have yet taken the training wheels off of him.
Yeah, he looked good to start the game, and he didn't look awful to end it. But I think the important factor with Caleb was on that first drive, Brian Flores didn't bring a lot of pressure in that first half. I think he only brought 2 blitzes in the first half, And as they started bringing more 5-man pressures and blitzing more, Caleb looked a lot more uncomfortable, as he should. And it's understandable, more pressure, quicker reads, things like that. And as the game goes on, you can't scramble the way that Caleb likes to scramble and end up with a positive result all the time. Eventually, you're going to start getting those negatives, and they started getting those negatives kind of after that first drive, and the offense didn't look the same.
No, they didn't. It was definitely an interesting game from that standpoint. A lot more entertaining than, frankly, I thought we could expect.
Yeah, and what stood out to me specifically when Chicago started to lose that control over the game in the second half was the front four for Chicago. Those four defensive linemen, they looked fantastic for the entirety of the first half. I mean, like they looked like all four of them were going to be all pros, by year's end if they kept that pace up. Because it was pressure, it was immediate. They were stopping the run. It was just almost perfect defensive line play from your front four, and they got nothing similar to the same result in the second half. And ultimately, I think that's probably what led to the Bears losing more than Caleb's maybe slowing down on the offensive side of the football was the way that defense the cracks started to show in the second half.
I got a quick question from Randy here. And Randy says, agree or disagree? The reality is that Miami is the best team in Florida at this time. They beat a very good Notre Dame team. Got to give Miami their props. They earned that top 5 ranking. Okay. Look, they played 2 games. They beat Notre Dame. Okay. No doubt that was a good win for them. I'm going to withhold the vote on whether or not they're the best team in Florida until they play USF. But right now, I think FSU is better than Miami. That's just my humble opinion.
I would say that right now I agree they're the best team in Florida. I would disagree on the fact that they earned that top 5 ranking. That I don't think they really earned that. That was more of a just like the AP doing what the AP does, to be quite honest. But they definitely have put together a good body of work through 2 games. Now you can argue that that Florida State's body of work is better, and to be honest with you, I might, but I really liked the physicality and going toe to toe with Notre Dame the way they did. And to be honest, I like their offense a little better than FSU right now, but we'll sort that out here in the coming weeks as Miami and Florida State play each other, and Miami and USF also play each other.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying this weekend.
Yeah, that's the game, 4:00, the CW network, and that game will be nationally televised. If you don't know the CW outlet in your area, I will be publishing all that information as I do every week on where you can find all of the games, no matter where you live in the United States. And by the way, with regard to the CW, they have a free app which you can download on your phone, be it Android or Apple, or if you happen to have, like I do, a Roku television, you can download it from the channel store, and you can watch it and stream it live. So if you have, if you want to watch the game and don't know where you'll find it, I'll give you that information on Friday. Plus, you also can just download the app and watch it as well. So gives you an opportunity. And by the way, that's where you can watch all the games on CW, which include, of course, the games for the Pac-12. So there's that. So we can see that. And the FSU games coming down the road. Observations of week 1 now that it's totally complete. The NFL.com had the listing, and I just went through the first 4 or 5 real quick. They have affiliate number 1 They have Buffalo at number 2, the Ravens at number 3, Green Bay at 4, and Kansas City at 5, with the Bucks at 6, the Commanders at 7, Lions at 8, Broncos at 9, and Rams at 10. I'm not so sure that I wouldn't have, and this is just me again, that I wouldn't have Buffalo and Baltimore 1, 2, and the Eagles 3.
I wouldn't, to be honest with you. There's a lot I'd change. One, I guess we're just forgetting what happened in Brazil on Friday night.
Right.
Where are the Chargers? Chiefs are at 5. What did they show you on Friday night that inspires the belief that they're number 5 right now, other than losing one of their top pass catchers for, and to my knowledge, an undetermined amount of time right now, and Xavier Worthy.
Right.
But I would put Green Bay above Philly right now.
Okay.
Green Bay better. They were both at home, division opponents. I think more highly of the Lions. They beat the Lions more soundly than the Eagles beat the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that the Eagles can't come around, but really the Eagles offense came down to what can Jalen Hurts do right now.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot in the pass game. It was almost exclusively running the football, it felt like, for most of the night for Philadelphia. The Packers found a good mixture. They were throwing the ball early. They ran the ball late to close it out, and their defense controlled that game. It felt like a complete victory for Green Bay. Philly, it felt like they were a couple plays away from being on the losing end of that football game. I do like Buffalo and Baltimore being ahead of either of the NFC teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, those were the 2 better teams that I saw over the weekend. Now it's week 1, so I'm not ordaining any of these teams, as the greatest team that I've ever seen. But I have a problem, as you do, with ranking teams who lost games, and I'm taking Baltimore out of that equation for the moment. Ranking teams like Detroit and Kansas City in the top 10, given the fact that if they played well, they would have won the games instead of lost the games. So, no, I don't. This is if we're gonna vote for, who are the best teams after week 1. How can you give teams like the Lions, who didn't play that great, and certainly Kansas City, who were outclassed by the Chargers, how do you give them rankings when they lost games? That I don't get.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. Which are these ratings or rankings?
This is the power rankings for the
Power
NFL.
rankings. Okay,
So
that does change the context around it, but it still is interesting given some of the results on the field. Like I'm okay in a power rating standpoint if you've got a team like the Lions up there, because I think they're going to beat a majority of, like, they're a better football team than the majority of ones in there. It's not record based. This is more just based on what you have on the field in terms of a power rating standpoint. So that I understand, but still, power rating a team higher than one they just lost to is something. This isn't college football. This isn't like, oh, look at a massive upset. It's not going to affect the power rankings that much, because the team that beat them, maybe they beat them 8 times out of 10 in
right.
in X model and something like that. But this is the NFL. The margins are a lot tighter. I think the Chiefs were like 2.5-point favorites or something like that in Brazil. So you see them lose in the fashion that they did, and lose a receiver as well. Then it does make it confusing, even on the power ratings scale, why they would be as high as they are.
I think that frankly, I think that ranking the Commanders 7 was, I think they got underranked. I think they should have gotten moved up on that list more than 7.
It's definitely possible. I'm still not I think the Commanders are a good football team. I would struggle to put them into the top 5. That kind of it feels like you're talking in a different era when you reach that top 5, and I don't feel like it's something that the Commanders are there yet.
I think they're better than right now. I think they're a better football team than both the Kansas City Chiefs and I guess Kansas City's the only team. Well, the Buccaneers are ahead of them. I think they're better Buccaneers than the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And that's just based on the fact that I think Kansas City, and I love Andy Reid, and I'm not disrespecting the fact that this is the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think that this is the year that Kansas City, has for them. Let me preface it that way. For them, they may not get through the playoffs this time around. I think this is the team. If you're going to get Kansas City, this is the year to get them.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, I think how gettable Kansas City is will continue to scale downwards. I think they're gonna become more gettable year by year. Travis Kelce's not getting any younger.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mahomes' contract is still that, and it is massive. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about my belief in signing quarterbacks to big contracts and how hard it is to build a really good team around them and be able to sustain success no matter how great they are. And I talked about Tom Brady taking the pay cuts in New England in order for them to be able to field a better roster. And that played a really good role in the longevity of success up there in New England.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So with all those factors combined, I think the key for Kansas City this year is really how do you look in the first 6 weeks? How does your offense look in the first 6 weeks? We know what the defense is going to be, relatively speaking. It's going to be pretty good. Spagnuolo is going to do what he does, and the same can kind of be said for Andy Reid. But the problem is that right now Andy Reid doesn't have a lot of weapons. Week 6, you're probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe an Xavier Ward is coming back, depending on what his injury looks like. But I know you're getting Rashee Rice back from suspension come week 6.
I think too that we were talking about Brady taking a pay cut. I know that when Jason Light sat down with Baker Mayfield to give him a deal, and he came in under what the Falcons turned around and gave Kirk Cousins, and everybody was looking at it and go, well, Kirk Cousins got a great deal. This is before they played a single game last season, and so at the end of the day, it was one of those situations where you sit back and go, Baker said that, I want this money because that'll give him, meaning Jason, more money to spend on keeping the guys around that keep us winning. So his 3-year extension, yeah, granted, it wasn't anywhere near what some of the other quarterbacks got, but at the same time, it gave Jason Light the ability to work under the cap.
And I know that with that money they saved, they went out and they re-signed Chris Godwin.
Right.
He got hurt, so that wasn't great. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they signed somebody on defense as well.
They did, yeah.
Money is, to go with it. So you actively got to see the direct result of what signing that lower money deal did for Tampa Bay.
Antoine Winfield Jr. is who they were able to re-sign. And let's not for nothing. I think one of the other things that we shouldn't overlook is the fact that Jason also did a heck of a job drafting, because he turns around and they get they add Deebo Samuel. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Washington.
Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons is a guy that turned out to be NFL ready. I'm not sure Jason Light thought it was the case, and he's got a receiver room that's not as bad as a lot of people think they are. So
yeah,
we'll see.
And you said that Antoine Winfield was the player. You saw a direct result in winning on Sunday because he broke up a pass in that final drive for the Falcons that would have stuck the Falcons inside the 5-yard line with a chance to go score a touchdown and win the football game. Instead, they had to settle for that field goal that they then missed.
Well, I think the other thing too with Baker and Todd Light is that Baker realizes he now has a home where people believe that he's the guy. And that never happened in Cleveland. It never happened in Carolina. It never happened. Well, Los Angeles, he was there. Los Angeles, he was there for, just as a quick backup because Matt Stafford was knocked out. But it proved good for the Buccaneers. It proved good for Baker. I mean, sometimes that situation where you take a guy, you take a chance on him, and it worked out pretty well. So for them, it did, and Jason, did well on that. But I do think that some of the fun things we're going to see. I'm interested in seeing a guy who you watch or watch more of over the next few weeks and years to come. I think Michael Penix is a real deal too. I think Michael's going to be good for the Falcons, and he's going to be good for football.
Yeah. You look at the games that the Falcons have lost with Michael Penix. They've all been close games, and I can't remember what the exact stat was, but there's something in the terms of like walk-off wins is basically a lot of the losses that the Falcons have faced. Michael Penix hasn't really had a chance to really do much about. He's had them in a winning position, and their defense has kind of lost them the football games on last drives. And so he's done a very good job. You saw it on Sunday. He's been efficient. He hasn't really made big mistakes all that often. And they have a fantastic skill group on offense too. If there's a place where a young quarterback can kind of grow into what they believe he can become, it's with a core that the Falcons have, however many injuries they're facing right now.
Well, the thing too, with Michael, which I've always been impressed with watching him in college as well, is that he's a very poised kid. He doesn't let things fluster him. He doesn't usually make mistakes out of total, bonehead moves. He's a very well thought of, thoughtful, I should say, young man with the ability to make pretty much all the throws. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him not be able to make a touch throw, or if he has to throw it long, he's got the arm for it. And so, yeah, I've always been impressed with the way he played.
Yeah, I will say it was a bit of a shock. I thought when the Falcons took him at 8, I was big, just the context around that pick. It was extremely perplexing at the time to me.
Yeah,
you just signed Kirk Cousins. Now you're drafting this kid. You didn't tell Kirk Cousins that you're drafting this kid.
Right.
Did it anyways. But obviously there was belief in the Falcons room that he was going to be the guy. And to their credit, so far he's looked the part. And if there was ever, a game where you can point to and say, well, why would the Falcons take this kid at 8? You go back and you watch that Sugar Bowl against Texas, and if you take that game and just a vacuum for what it is, that game alone can make you go, okay, yeah, I'd take this kid top 10. It makes sense.
The funny thing about this, we're throwing Kirk Cousins into this, is that the year that Cousins was drafted by Washington was the year that they drafted RG3 as the number 1 draft choice on the board. Now, there was an argument between the owner at that time, Dan Snyder, about RG3 and Mike Shanahan, who at that point was the coach of the team, who felt that RG3 was not necessarily because of the run pass offense, which Shanahan never ran. He was not. He thought that Cousins at the time probably would be a better long-term choice for the team than RG3. And RG3 gets hurt. It wasn't. That's just life in the NFL and in football. people get injured. Cousins came in, played well for his time, the time he was there, and Cousins will forever be a solid, thought of backup NFL quarterback, but he's not gonna take you to the Super Bowl um, on his abilities. He's not a bad guy, not not dumb. He plays pretty smart, but he just he doesn't he's not that kind of guy who takes charge and takes charge of when he's in the huddle. You don't feel as if the team is like, okay, fine, we're going to go down and drive and win this game. It's a totally different vibe, even with Michael Penix in his early stages of the NFL.
Well, I'll give you some pushback on that. I think he was that guy in Minnesota. There was a
Mhm.
lot of belief in him, especially from his receivers and his head coach and Kevin O'Connell. And I think he was that guy, especially in the latter portion of his time in Minnesota. Now, obviously, he had that Achilles injury, and I think post that Achilles injury,
Mhm.
he doesn't have that same ability anymore. But I saying that he was never that guy, I feel like would be a bit disrespectful to Kirk and his overall body of work that he's put in the NFL.
Well, let me amend what I said. I if I came off harsh on Kirk, I didn't mean to, because you're not going to meet a nicer guy than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not going to meet a more dedicated to the game guy than Kirk Cousins. I think the problem that Kurt had in Washington and in Minnesota was a lack of I'm trying to say this politely, but I'm not sure I can, and that is that I don't know that the organizations believed in him,
Yeah.
and I think when the organizations don't believe in you, it makes it difficult for the quarterback to command the respect of the team. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Kurt's a bad guy. I'm not saying that he's not talented. I'm just saying that it seems like everywhere he's gone, he's been disrespected. And I don't know how much more disrespectful you can get than signing a $145 million contract and then have the organization draft a kid, uh, in the draft, which everybody and their grandmother knew was not going to be a guy who was going to sit on the bench.
Yeah. And not tell you about it either.
Yeah.
And what I will say in credit to, or maybe not in credit, but just as an overall point, is just uh, Kirk Cousins, I think, prior to the Achilles injury, is a guy
Mm-hmm.
who probably deserved that contract that he got from Atlanta. I
Uh-huh.
was confused by the money when they gave it to him. Just that whole organization, the way they ran it last year in the offseason, it was very confusing. It was a confusing contract to hand out. It was a confusing move to draft Michael Penix after you handed out that contract. And overall, the optics of it for the Falcons organization wasn't great at the time.
Well, I mean, what the fan base there? What was the fan base's thought about this?
I think similar to, I think it was just a similar, just general sense of confusion. Like we don't get it. We've drafted 4 times in a row now because we go Pitts, London, Bijan, now Penix. And, looking at it now, it's like, okay, that's good drafting. But at the time, Pitts has been what he's been. Drake London hadn't really, he was good, but he hadn't really fully broken out yet. And, Bijan was what Bijan was, which was really good. But it was like, hey, did we just waste our number 8 overall pick on a guy who may not play this year? Depending on how
Mhm.
Kirk plays, may not play next year,
Right.
because there wasn't this immediate belief that Michael Penix was going to start. There was a belief that
Mhm.
kind of like, hey, we believe in this guy, but we still want to give him a little bit of time. That's kind of the reason that Kirk Cousins is here. But also at the same time, it was very much a sense of like, well, this guy can't sit on the bench for the entirety of this Kirk Cousins contract. So
Well,
when is the time
yeah.
going to come that Michael Penix is going to take over for Kirk?
I guess I'm curious as to what Terry Fontenot. Why do you hire Raheem Morris, who's a defensive coach, and then draft the quarterback?
Yeah. Yeah, you've spent the last 4 years drafting offensive weapons, so let's go
Hmm.
hire a defensive minded guy.
Right.
which in general, I feel like defensive-minded guys, they're less flashy, I would say, but I feel like just in terms of overall success, I'm not talking just pure Super Bowls, but just
Right.
in terms of building a winning football program in the NFL, I feel like defensive guys have a tendency to be more successful, and offensive guys tend to burn out. Their peaks may be a little bit higher on the offensive guys, but they tend to not have the same longevity.
Well, I have great respect for. I mean, if you take a look at using that theory, pretty much 80% of the time that you win a Super Bowl, it's a defensive coach that's at the helm of the team. But I like Raheem Morris. I thought that was a good hire. I just couldn't figure out what the hell they were doing with Ricard. I mean, they need people on defense. It's not like they're um, a juggernaut on the defensive side of the field. So you could have used that. There's a lot of guys that would have been fantastic fits for Atlanta at that draft choice to use Penix on it. I thought was pretty curious.
Well, I will say it was curious at that point in time, but then you go back to the way they drafted this year, and you can see the plan they have in place. It feels like a more coherent plan now than it did this time last year, because you have Penix, and Penix looks good. Bijan looks good. Drake London, hopefully he gets back on the field soon. I'm not exactly sure what injury he's dealing with. I think somebody said it was a shoulder, possibly an AC joint. He looks good. Kyle Pitts looked a little better this past weekend. So those offensive weapons look good. And then you turn around and you flip to the defensive side of the football, and Xavier Watts is starting. He was a draft choice this past draft. James Pierce is starting. He was a first-round pick this last draft. You've got Jalen Walker waiting in the wings, which feels like a guy that will get on the field probably sooner rather than later, another first-round draft choice from this year. So they went through, and I feel like they added to their defense in the places they felt the need via the draft this year, trying to be able to really supplement what they already had. Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell back there. But they needed pass rushers. They went and got pass rushers, and they needed another safety. They went and drafted another safety in this offseason. I like the way they've built this team. It's a lot younger than it has been, and it feels like you have a much better sense of direction if you're the Falcons going forward.
Let me ask you a quick question about you. You don't live too far from the campus of the University of Georgia, and you're hooked into what goes on from Atlanta to Athens. Is it fair to say, because I spent a few years doing work with the Falcons on their preseason TV, broadcasts, and also putting together stuff for their coaches. I've always had the feeling that Atlanta, on the football side, has always been a stronger college town than it has been an NFL town. Is that a fair statement or unfair statement?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I would say in the metro area, you're probably more geared towards like in Atlanta specifically, and maybe even a little bit surrounding. You might get a little bit stronger on the NFL side of things, but you get outside of about a 15 to 20 minute radius of pure downtown Atlanta. It's not the Falcons anymore. It's Georgia football. And even some in the metro area, Tech's right there.
Right.
So they have a little bit of pull, and as Brent Key, continues to build that program, which I believe he will. I think the draw is only going to get a little stronger, but they definitely, you turn on the TV every Saturday, Georgia's gonna have a packed house. You turn on the TV on Sundays, same can't be said for the Falcons. A lot of empty seats in Atlanta over these past few years.
I remember doing Jerry Glanville's show back when Jerry was coaching in Atlanta, and Jerry had a opening line which I thought was typical Jerry, because Jerry really didn't care what the ownership thought of, because that he was happy to sign. He goes, he was so excited. He says, after he signed, he had the team gave him 4 season tickets, and he put them on the front seat of his car. Ran into get some groceries, came out, the windshield was broken, and there were 8 season tickets in his car. So basically, it was like the Falcons had not been respected, and Jerry was out to try to come up with an idea to bring respect, which I'm not so sure. Well, he had Dion on that team, so that was a pretty wild team that he had.
Yeah. And what I will say is I don't think the Falcons have really kind of done themselves any favors in terms of it being, what do we care more about, the NFL or college?
Right.
Because they've had opportunities to draft players from the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, some of these draft choices have aged very poorly. I remember I think it was not last year, but the year before, coming out of the draft, the Bulldogs had a DB by the name of Kamari Lassiter, who is now in Houston. He was in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. He's one of the better corners in the NFL, and he's got all the physical tools. He's a budding star over there in Houston. The Falcons, I think, they had the 37th draft choice, and they picked a DB again. That was a part-time starter, I believe, at Miami. Part-time starter, not full-time. He was a part-time starter at Miami. They drafted him instead of Lassiter. I can't even tell you that dude's name, and I can tell you exactly what's going on in Kamari Lassiter's career, which is on an upward trajectory.
Right.
Things such as that doesn't exactly endure a fan base. If you're a mainly, like, if you love the University of Georgia and you love college football and you don't care near as much about the NFL, but man, I love the Dogs. Well, guess who you might be more interested in turning on the TV and watching right now? The Philadelphia Eagles, who have drafted seemingly almost exclusively from the University of Georgia over the last few years.
No, there's no question about it.
Yeah. So that doesn't help.
No. All right. I'm gonna give you a job. Okay. You can pick a team that is on the second level. In other words, they're not top tier yet. If you could be the general manager of any team that you feel you could take to the next level, who would it be?
Oh man, on that next level.
You want to. You feel maybe they don't. Maybe they got a new coach. Maybe they got some. They got the pieces there that you could add to, and with a little bit of nudging, you might be able to get them over the top. Which right now they don't seem to be going in that direction. So there's somebody you think you could turn around with a little bit of just a little bit of help and some drafting and some signing and free agency.
To be honest with you, I feel like the Giants aren't that far away. It feels odd to say, but it doesn't feel like they're that far away. I like what they've done in the draft defensively over the last couple of years. I feel like they're missing a few pieces there, but I mean, Malik Neighbors is a star receiver for them. He is, and their offensive line still has a lot of question marks. Andrew Thomas, their bookend left tackle, is currently out with an injury, but when he's healthy, he's been very good. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know what injury he's currently dealing with, and I'm not sure. Based on the severity of it, will he be the same player coming back from it? Is a bit up in the air. But I like what they've done. I like Jackson Dart at quarterback. I believe eventually Cam Scadaboo will probably become running back 1 there in New York. But I think it's going to – there are reports coming out that there's been a push for Dart to start a quarterback. And, you say what you will about sitting quarterbacks specifically and letting them learn. I think it is valuable experience that they can take. But I also feel like with that current quarterback room, Jackson Dart's their best option. Maybe growing pains. There will be growing pains along the way, but I feel like starting him now is going to set you up better for success in the future.
I think you probably have half of the fan base of the New York Giants on your side with the Jackson Dart situation. I think. I mean, he's a very mature young man. I think that you're not gonna hurt him by starting him.
Yeah.
But I don't see him getting in at least until the 5th or 6th game of the season. I really don't. And I wish I'm not saying that he shouldn't be. I'm just saying that the Giants organization is an organization that at times doesn't show any real, intestinal fortitude as to what they can do with people.
Well, the report that I read this morning, and I think it was like a Twitter headline, so maybe I got by a blue check mark somebody paid for.
Yeah.
But it appeared to be that the push was coming from the ownership, from above Dable, to start Dart, which I think is interesting. When you have a front office coaching clash, it can sometimes be bad. But, they believed in Dart enough to pick him in the first round. And if Dable believes in a guy, I think that he'll get in there sooner rather than later, whether it be this week, next week, or 4 weeks from now. But I think that's the road the Giants are headed down. And to be honest, I think it's better just to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off and do it now as to wait and potentially waste some weeks that maybe you could have been a winner otherwise.
Well, I'm just scrolling real quick to take a look and see what's going on, and I really don't see. I'm looking for a headline where they New York Post has it where it looks like Russ is going to start this week.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to. Yeah, Russ is going to start against the Cowboys this week.
And I think that brings up, another point. Not Giants specifically, but when is the league going to kind of accept Russell Wilson for what he is now? It seems like everybody's been waiting on him to return to the form that he was at when he was winning Super Bowls in Seattle, which just isn't the case. Quite frankly, I'm shocked that the Giants were, brazen enough to go out and make him not only sign him, but make him their starter after what they saw in Pittsburgh last year. Pittsburgh won in spite of Russell Wilson. They win because of Russell Wilson last year. And he got another starting job.
Well, and Pittsburgh played against a quarterback that they, Fields, who they gave away. And I think the Fields is actually going to be a good fit in for the Jets.
Yeah.
He's got talent. He might be, and I don't know that this will be the proper analogy. He might be a Baker Mayfield, a guy who needs to get away from all the drama to actually get to play. And if you give him that opportunity, maybe he can get it done.
And I think that's what he was looking for when he went to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I agree with you. To get away from the drama. Somehow he found himself in more drama, than of similar circumstances it was in Chicago, which continues to be a place where quarterbacks go to die.
Right, and I like Mike. Mike Tomlin is a good man, but his. He just can't leave. They were 4-2, and Russell came in and they finished the season 10-4 or something like that. But had he just given Fields the opportunity, I think Fields still would have got him to the playoffs.
Yeah,
and you would have had a quarterback that had a year under his belt, and was far more physically gifted. Hell, he was far more physically gifted than Russ. And look, Russ has had a great career. I don't think that Wilson is going to, he's not going to take you to the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. And you're right. He's on the back end of his career. And to annoyed him a quarterback when you've got Jackson Dart sitting on the bench. There's look at what Bo Nix was able to do with Denver and some of these other guys who people didn't know. I mean, Jackson Dart, a lot of us knew or felt anyway that Jackson Dart was not rated as well on the quarterback scale as some should have given him credit for. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is if you want I feel like you have a pretty good, litmus test as to the way Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson would have kind of panned out in Pittsburgh, just because I feel like the way that the Jets and the Giants are both built, I think they're built very similarly in terms of their roster construction. Now, obviously, two different staffs and stuff like that.
Sure.
You aren't working with direct parallels, but I think in terms of same place, similar roster construction, they've got one star receiver. The Jets backfield's a little bit better. You can make an argument that the line's probably a little bit better as well for the Jets, but they're still working on very similarly constructed teams, and we'll see kind of where their records stand after a few weeks for as long as Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback for the Giants.
Yeah, it's ironic that the two of them are, in the same city now.
Sharing a stadium.
Sorry?
They're sharing a stadium again.
Right, exactly.
One of them doesn't have to sit on the bench.
So it's that's got to be an interesting parking lot to come over there and see where each one of them are parked in the players' parking garage. It's like Justin Fields. Like, say, my God, I get everywhere I go. I got Russell Wilson over my back. So we'll see, but interesting. So you would take the Giants, and it would be interesting. I think the Giants are. I agree. I think the Giants are, a team that is not going to be too far away from being more successful than they have been in a while.
And I will say the other team that I was struggling back and forth with, and the reason I went with the Giants over them is because I felt like the Giants were much further off than them, and you could argue that they maybe wouldn't fall into this tier. But the Houston Texans and they feel like they're very close to being just right where they need to be in a weak division. Maybe the coming on of a younger receiver. Maybe it's one of the two guys they drafted from Iowa State. I'm fairly certain they drafted both of them. But they feel close. If Nick Chubb can return to a solid form into this year, and they have one more receiver come on, then I think Houston's going to be in a very good spot because I love their defense a lot, especially the back end of it.
All right. After week one, one more opportunity here to put either a general manager or coaching hat on. And you can pick it from either AFC or NFC. Who is your dark horse? Who is that team that may be flying under the radar, who may turn out to be, the surprise and new playoff contender that folks weren't looking for, but suddenly they popped up there?
Oh, I struggle. Did you say new playoff contender? And they definitely don't.
No, if you want. I mean, if they were. Let me amend that. That's not fair to take and make it new. Somebody that has been, I mean, to me, I'm looking at it and going, well, if not now, when for the Cincinnati Bengals? That would be my push.
I would go with the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford's starting to look a bit like an ageless wonder over there in LA. Maybe they've got some good plastic surgeries, but he's looked every bit like his younger self still, coming out of week one. They've got Puka Nacua, they've got Devontae Adams, and that defense looks, just as good as it was last year. Again, they held the Texans, to what was it? I don't even think they scored. Would they score 17 points maybe?
Yeah, there was like 215 yards. Total.
Yeah, CJ Stroud didn't eclipse 200 passing yards.
Right.
So the defense looks good again. The offense has Kyron Williams in the backfield, and then the receivers, like I just talked about, the tight ends. Man, Sean McVay just rolls a guy out there, and as long as he can be a safety blanket for Matthew Stafford, that's the entirety of their job. So I like the way the Rams are built, and since in their time together, all Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay have done is won.
Yeah. No, the only time they didn't was when he was hurt.
Yep.
And if they can keep him upright, I think they got to. I think the Rams are. I would agree with you. I think the Rams on the NFC side are a team that's being overlooked, and you can't anticipate. I mean, people. What is amazing to me is that people tend to think, well, it's going to happen sometime during the year that Matt's going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? That could happen to anybody. Okay. So, okay. Yeah. He tweaks his back during the off season. Things were a little weird. They came out of preseason with this kind of like a little question mark, but until somebody hurts him or I hope he doesn't get hurt, Matt Stafford still is a top quality quarterback in the league. And he's got a lot of good players around him, as you pointed out. And he's got a coach who's offensively a very gifted offensive mind. So, until somebody proves wrong, the Rams, I'm with you on the Rams.
Yeah, and I will say there is a small part of me that wonders, even if Matthew Stafford gets hurt, as long as it's not, season-ending injury,
right? Sure.
Something where you can take the time. I like their backup options, whether it be Jimmy Garoppolo or even you go down to the third and Stetson Bennett. I like both of those options at quarterback.
I forgot Stetson Bennett was on that team.
He's got. I mean, people probably wouldn't be too thrilled if he got in the football game, the same way they were at the University of Georgia for a couple of years. Because I mean, they didn't want him to come back for 2022, a year in which he won a national title. Nobody wanted him to ride off into the sunset after he was, nobody wanted him to be the starting quarterback for the entirety of the 2021 season,
right?
Which he also won a national championship. So I think he's back there. If he were to get in, he'd do a fine job. They have Jimmy Garoppolo for a reason. Sean McVay believes in him as well. And again, I talked about it with Kevin O'Connell yesterday. I said if there's gonna be somebody that's going to bring out the best in J.J. McCarthy when it comes to the NFL and make me a believer in him, it's going to be Kevin O'Connell. Well, if there's somebody that I trust to pretty much plug and play a quarterback, it's going to be Sean McVay and his offense.
Yep. And you're right. I you know what? I lost Stetson Bennett. so good. I knew Garoppolo because he is the ultimate insurance policy. He's not going to hurt you. He'll win games for you. And I think to your point, the reason that that the Rams have been successful is that Sean McVay is a positive guy. He's not. He looks at it and he treats players. He's we often hear the cliche, he's a player's coach. Well, not always are these coaches players' coaches, but Sean McVay is a player's coach, and they love him, and they love playing for him, and so the Rams. If the Rams make the playoffs this year, would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't be surprised they won the division. Out there, it's there for them to take. San Francisco gets guys hurt getting off the bus. So that's a problem there. And I've never quite taken that the Cardinals are that, strong of a team. And God knows what's going on with Seattle. So, look, not only could they make the playoffs, they could win that division.
Yeah. And what I will say is I in terms of that divisional race, I would put the Cardinals as second in that division. I do like what they've got better on defense, and it feels like this is kind of a make or break year for Kyler. But this is year 2 for Marvin Harrison. They've got a fantastic tight end in Trey McBride too. So they have some of the pieces available to go be a good football team if they can get a little more help from the players around them as well.
Here's one of my issues with the Cardinals, and that falls into ownership and dedication to to giving them what they need to do to win. Stan Kroenke and the Rams, he's kind of like a Dodgers mentality. Whatever it takes, we'll go get it. Such is not the case with Bidwell in Arizona. So, I'd love to see the Cardinals play, better and do well. But I'm going to go with the Rams over the Cardinals pretty much 9 out of 10 times because of the way that the ownership will give them what they need to succeed, as opposed to, the Bidwell way, which is not necessarily, going out and doing things that they need to do.
Which and there's definitely a different mindset in both of those front offices, because you think back to 2021 when the Rams did win the Super Bowl, and I'm pretty sure on that Super Bowl parade, their GM Les Snead was wearing a shirt that said "F them picks."
Yeah.
So he sold all his picks, went out and got the pieces for what he felt like was a Super Bowl caliber roster, but needed some help in some other places. Right. And maybe you're sitting around trade deadline time this year, and you're looking up and you're like, hey, the Rams have been really good up to this point, but we've got problems here, and here. Well, if they feel like they're 2 or 3 pieces away, you better bet that Les Snead's going to go out there and he's going to put it all on the table to go fill those needs.
Well, and ownership has to be on board. And so that's what I'm saying. Stan Kroenke, to me, when you give the general manager in any sport carte blanche and say, look, go get you if that's what it's going to take to get us to the playoffs, go get them.
And he's kind of adopted that mentality. It's almost the mentality that you have to have in LA. I mean, think about you talked about the Dodgers, but I mean the Lakers as well. They've seemingly gone. Now their moves haven't worked out necessarily in the same way that the Dodgers moves have in the recent past, but they've very much been an all-in organization as well, because they understand that it's an entertainment business, and if they put more in, they're going to get more out, especially in the location that they're in.
Well, and if you look just from a baseball standpoint, if you look at Andrew Friedman, who is the general manager out there, and Stan Kasten, who's the president of baseball operations, I have got amazing respect for Stan. Stan ran the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks, the Atlanta Braves, and the Atlanta Thrashers, I think was the hockey team at the time. He's the only guy in professional sports who's run 3 franchises at the same time as president. He brought in John Schuerholz, and for 14 consecutive years, the Braves made the playoffs and had some pretty darn good baseball teams during that time. Came to Washington, helped put together a team that ended up winning the 2019 World Series, and then went out to Los Angeles, and the rest is history there. But you're right. Entertainment, sports is entertainment in Los Angeles, and it's very important to who is number one with regard to in the newspapers and on TV. And if that the Dodgers have seemingly an unlimited amount of cash to spend, but they don't do stupid things, and I think that's been smart too. They've gone out and got guys who can play, and not just play, but play multiple positions. I mean, look how many positions Mookie Betts has played. He plays 3 positions, in a week for the Dodgers. So they've not just added; they've added with some forethought, and I think that's amazing from that standpoint.
And on the Dodgers side of things, they getting away from football a little bit, but they go out and they sign everybody in the offseason. On the pitching side of things, they went out and they signed 1,000 bullpen arms, and they added more depth to what people believe was already one of the best, if not the best, rotation in baseball. It's like, well, why do they do that? Well, you look up and they've got 100 injuries because their pitching program destroys everybody's elbow.
Right.
It's a good pitching program. It produces great results, but when they're not producing great results, that's because they're injured.
Right.
So,
and they still won the World Series last year with a team with pitchers that, frankly, it wasn't their first string pitching staff.
Walker Buehler closed out the World Series. He's currently pitching in AAA for the Phillies.
Right.
After a failed stint in Boston.
Right.
So,
what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah.
And we're down to maybe we'll talk about this soon. We don't have to always talk about football, but this is going to be a wild September with all the different teams in baseball that have a chance of making the playoffs. I mean, it's going to be, it's kind of like a NASCAR race. You're looking at these clumps of cars, hoping that somebody can draft on the other guy, or is it going to end up in a big wreck at the end? So there's a piece I wrote this morning about, how crazy it is out there in baseball land. And the interesting thing is there's a lot of marquee names out there, which makes it even more amazing from that standpoint. So anyway.
What I will say is in the racing analogy, my Boston Red Sox have blown a tire here in recent weeks, loss of Roman Anthony. So.
Well, you know what? They got time to patch that thing back up and get it out there and roll on.
I hope. I hope.
We'll see. We will definitely see. Well, Matt, as always, my friend, it's been a pleasure. We will be back tomorrow around noon, and maybe tomorrow we will, since it's a Wednesday. Not that much going on to. We'll have Thursday's football to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about this pennant race tomorrow. Have some fun with that.
Sure.
Okay. All right, gang. Thanks so much for joining us. Matt and I will be back tomorrow. Hope that you've enjoyed being with us, because we've enjoyed having you with us. If you get a chance, do us a favor. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button, and drop us a comment. We'll be happy to answer any and all questions. Okay? All right. Until tomorrow, take care, everybody.